Today we'll be learning what are the hormones that are related to these two organs, very important organs, their very important function, how they are secreted, how they're regulated, and what are the disorders that are associated with these two organs and their hormones. Alright? Please pay attention in the front. If you keep distracting me like that, the class will go longer. So this is a picture of hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So endocrine, is it done in physiology or not? Yes, right? So it'll be easier for me to go quickly. So hypothalamus and pituitary, both of them connected together through this network of nerves and fibers. This is called pituitary stalk. Okay, as you can see in the picture, the nerve fibers from the hypothalamus going and ending in the posterior pituitary gland, and it contains lots of vessels, blood vessels, both the artery and the venous supply. Hypothalamus, also known as the master coordinator of the endocrine function or hormonal function. Who's the coordinator? A coordinator is the one who arranges everything, who supervises everything, right? If you have a birthday party, so that person, if you hire somebody as a coordinator to arrange the birthday party, you know you will need balloons, you know you need food, eatables, drinks, decorations. The coordinator is not going to go to the market and buy it himself. He's going to arrange for people and he's going to overlook everything that they do. He's going to make sure that this happens. This is the work of the coordinator, and that is exactly what hypothalamus does. It is what it does is it secretes its own hormones that does not directly go and act on the target organs. What it does is the hormones that are secreted from the hypothalamus acts on the pituitary gland, and pituitary gland, in response to the stimuli produced by the hypothalamus, releases certain organs and those certain hormones, and those hormones are the ones that act on the target organs. So the hypothalamus releases two types of peptide. One is called neuropeptide and the other is called releasing factors. So the neuropeptides are only two. One is ADH or antidiuretic hormone, also known as vasopressin. Another one is oxytocin. So that is actually synthesized in the hypothalamus, not in the pituitary gland. It is synthesized in the hypothalamus, in the supraoptic nuclei as well as paraventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus. It gets activated and through these nerve fibers that we have seen previously goes to the posterior pituitary gland, gets stored there to be released when the time comes. Okay, and the rest of the hormones are known as releasing hormones. As you can see over here, all of their names start with releasing. They are thyrotropin releasing hormone TRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone GnRH, growth hormone releasing hormone, and corticotropin releasing hormone. Along with these hormones, they also have certain hormones that have inhibitory effects. For example, somatostatin. Somatostatin's other name is growth hormone releasing inhibitory hormone and prolactin releasing inhibitory hormone. So from the name itself, you will know their function. Very easy. Thyrotropin releasing hormone, meaning it acts on the anterior pituitary gland, helps them to release TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. TSH then acts on the thyroid to release T3 and T4, right? Same with GnRH. GnRH is gonadotropin releasing hormone, gonads. So LH and FSH secretion from the anterior pituitary gland happens because of GnRH. Therefore, it acts, the LH and FSH released from the anterior pituitary will then act on the ovaries and testes and cause these functions. We will go later on into that. GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone, helps in release of growth hormone. CRF helps in release of ACTH. Okay, ACTH is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Somatostatin will inhibit everything, will inhibit growth hormone, will inhibit TSH, will inhibit gut hormones, pancreatic hormones, gastric secretion, everything. PIF inhibits prolactin release. Coming to pituitary, any of you know the weight of pituitary gland, approximate weight? Anybody? It is less than 1 gram, 0.6 gram, tiny like a pea. A pea-sized organ, but you know it is known as the master gland of the endocrine organ or endocrine system. Why? Because the whole pituitary gland, the hormones that are released by that organ acts on the target organs and causes a lot of biochemical reaction, and the whole thing is controlled because of the small pea-sized organ. And how? These are the anterior pituitary gland hormones. So pituitary gland has anterior, posterior, and in the middle there is pars media, which is rudimentary in humans. So we'll talk about first anterior pituitary gland. These are the hormones secreted. From the previous slides, you would have understood that these are the hormones secreted. Growth hormone, TSH, ACTH, prolactin, FSH, LH, and melanocyte stimulating hormone. All of these hormones, some of them have similar functions, some of them have similar structure, because of which we are dividing them further into these three classifications. So one is called growth hormone, prolactin hormone. Obviously, it will contain both growth hormone and prolactin hormone. Second group is the glycoprotein hormones. And the third group is the pro-opiomelanocortin peptide group. We'll go one by one. So, in the first group, growth hormone, prolactin hormone group, we have growth hormone. Growth hormone, obviously from the name itself, you would know that it is used for growth. It is produced by the acidophil cells of the anterior pituitary gland. There is a diurnal variation in growth hormone that we see. It is found that it is least concentration, the plasma concentration of growth hormone is least in the afternoon, and at night when a person is in deep sleep, that we find that there is highest concentration of growth hormone. So when our parents used to tell us when we were growing children, that you have to sleep in order to grow. So this is very true when we read this growth hormone. But just because you're sleeping doesn't mean that your growth hormone will be secreted. A lot of factors are involved in this. For example, stress, your quality of sleep, how much you're sleeping, when are you sleeping, if there is any stress, if there is pain, if there is trauma, all of these things affect the synthesis of growth hormone. The regulation is done by two hormones, from growth hormone inhibitory hormone and growth hormone releasing hormone, right? This is in nutshell all the effect that growth hormone has on the body. So it is essential for growth. In protein metabolism, it has anabolic effect, which means it helps in protein synthesis. There is overall positive nitrogen balance. What it means is that there is more nitrogen produced in the body than compared to the excretion of nitrogen. Simply, it means that there is protein synthesis. It helps in protein synthesis, it promotes protein synthesis. Coming to carbohydrate metabolism, growth hormone is opposite to insulin. So what is the function of insulin? Insulin helps in uptake of glucose from the circulation and helps in peripheral utilization of it, right? This acts opposite. So it impairs glycolysis and it reduces glucose uptake from the periphery. Therefore, there is more glucose in the system, there is hyperglycemia. Then in the lipid metabolism, it causes lipolysis and it helps in bone mineralization. What is mineralization? It simply means there is deposition of all of these minerals into the bones. For example, calcium, phosphorus, zinc, whatever minerals we have, there's deposition. It helps in making the bone stronger. So, helps in bone growth. Clinically, you see in this picture, there is a toddler. There's just a toddler and his height is almost 4 feet already. This is called gigantism because of excessive production of growth hormone. Can happen because if there is any tumor in the pituitary gland. This happens before the closure of the epiphyseal plates. In osteology, you must have read what are the epiphyseal plates of the long bones. So this probably around 19 years of age it closes. So before that closes, when we see these features, we call it gigantism from the word giants, okay, seen in growing children. So these children are born normally. They are not like 5 or 6 kgs during delivery. They are normal, they have normal weight, but as they grow during their toddlerhood, they start to really gain weight as well as height, okay. If this is seen in adults, this is called acromegaly. So after the bones close, you cannot grow any longer, right? But there is more growth hormone. So what it does is, it grows other ways. For example, look at this man's face. He has a big head, big ear, large ears, big nose, and look at the chin, quite big. The whole structure is huge. Look at the hands. On the right side, there is acromegalic hand. On the left side is a normal hand of the same age group. So you can see this whole feature. This is called acromegaly. Do you know any celebrity in India who has acromegaly? Who is this? The Great Khali, right? I do not know if he's doing wrestling anymore. I don't think he's in WWE anymore. But he has all the features of acromegaly. The acromegaly, the opposite of it, dwarfism. Less impairment of growth hormone, right? There is no growth in the body. Who is this guy on the left? Peter Dinklage, okay? Hollywood actor from GOT. How many of you have watched GOT? Okay, quite a few of you. Who's this? Messi. So it's known he has been diagnosed with having impairment in growth hormone, lack of deficiency of growth hormone, diagnosed when he was 11 years of age. And he had to take treatment for that. His height is about 5'7", from what I know. Great footballer. Let's talk about prolactin. So, very important hormone, prolactin, also known as lactogenic hormone. Why? Because it helps in lactation. Anybody who lacks prolactin, or if there is any injury to the pituitary gland, they will not produce milk. Along with that, it also helps in promotion of HMP shunt pathway and helps in lipid biosynthesis. Basically helps the corpus luteum, helps it to not disintegrate. So corpus luteum produces progesterone. So it helps corpus luteum to produce progesterone. Especially helpful during pregnancy because the function of progesterone is to maintain pregnancy. Now the glycoprotein group, we have these hormones, TSS, FSH, LH and HCG. So thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid gland, obviously from the name itself, helps it to release T3, T4. It helps in uptake of iodine, it helps in conversion of iodide to iodine. And also along with that helps in synthesis of protein, nucleic acid and phospholipid within the thyroid gland. This is a feedback mechanism that is followed in other organs as well. So how are these hormones regulated? So this is called a negative feedback mechanism, or you can say a feedback loop. Hypothalamus has released TRH, that is his job, will then act on the pituitary gland that will release TSH. Up TSH will go and act on the thyroid glands to release thyroid hormones. What are the thyroid hormones? T3 and T4. When there is increased concentration of T3 and T4, that itself will act as a stimulus to negatively or to inhibit TSH. It will go to the anterior pituitary and tell them stop producing TSH. It will go to the hypothalamus, signal them not to produce TRH anymore, so as to maintain a balance, alright? FSH, LH and HCG. Both the follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone are important for males and females equally. Follicular stimulating meaning stimulates the follicular growth. It acts on the ovaries, right? Helps in release of estrogen, in males progesterone, males testosterone. Then LH then will act on the Leydig cells, helping release of testosterone, as well as helps in spermatogenesis. And LH will help in the release of progesterone from corpus luteum. HCG or human gonadotropic hormone, important hormone in pregnancy. So this is also produced by the syncytiotrophoblasts cells of the growing embryo. That's why we do urine pregnancy test early during pregnancy. When someone misses their period, they'll do urine pregnancy test to test for HCG. This is the last group, the pro-opiomelanocortin peptide. Basically, it's a long peptide containing about 285 amino acids that further gets cleaved into pro-ACTH, then ACTH, into beta-lipotropic hormone, and so on. You don't have to know this whole picture. All you have to know is these 4 important hormones that are released. So, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone, will act on the adrenal glands to release cortisol. It also helps in the conversion of cholesterol to pregnenolone, the first step in steroidogenesis, enhances RNA and protein synthesis, and also helps in lipolysis because it activates lipoprotein lipase. The same. This is the feedback mechanism that we see for these group of hormones. Hypothalamus releasing corticotropin releasing hormone CRH that will act on the anterior pituitary gland, that will release ACTH, that will act on the adrenal cortex to release cortisol. Increase in the amount of cortisol will then act as a negative stimulation for anterior pituitary gland and hypothalamus so that they stop producing CRH and ACTH in response to that. This is Cushing syndrome, seen in excess production of ACTH. From the picture you would see there is moon phases, right? There is edema, there is hyperpigmentation in the body. You would see these patients, they have hypertension also, they have impaired glucose tolerance. Happens because of excessive production. Again, it can happen because of if there is any tumor in the pituitary gland. LPH, lipotropin hormone, not very important. Lipotropin causes lipolysis. Its main function is that it acts as a precursor for the formation of enkephalins and endorphins. What are they? They are peptide neurotransmitters and they have opioid-like effect. So CNS depression, pain regulation, pain perception is their function. And they bind to the same receptor as morphine receptor. So they have structural. And finally, the melanocyte stimulating hormone. Melanocyte stimulating hormone. The name itself says it stimulates melanocytes, which produces melanin hormone. So it helps in darkening of the skin, right? Let's talk about posterior pituitary gland. There are only two hormones from the posterior pituitary gland. One is ADH or vasopressin, and then there is oxytocin. Oxytocin, a very important hormone, acts on the mammary gland and helps in milk ejection. So it helps in contraction of the myoepithelial cells of the mammary glands. So when a baby suckles, there is nipple stimulation that leads to ejection, milk ejection. Prolactin helps in production of milk and oxytocin helps in ejection of milk, okay? Understand the difference. The other important thing is it triggers uterine contraction during childbirth. Why is it important? So for a person who has, let's say a person is already having term pregnancy, or if there is fetal distress, baby is not coming down, mother is ready to deliver. So in that case, what the gynec does is, he or she will then induce the patient for delivery. So naturally it is not happening. We give synthetic oxytocin, okay? So in India we call it syntocinon, and I think in European countries it's called pitocin. That is given and then it helps in contraction of the uterus. So when the uterus contracts, the baby comes down, right? Another thing that is important is, say a person after delivering the baby, there is huge amount of blood loss known as postpartum hemorrhage, which is very dangerous. A person can die within 1 hour if you don't take care of the person. So when there is postpartum hemorrhage, oxytocin is used. We use that along with IV drip. So we inject there, then we give IM as well. So that helps in contraction. So when the placenta is delivered, then the uterus contracts and that stops the blood from flowing. ADH, you just had, I think, class on urine in physiology just before me. This is antidiuretic hormone. What is diuresis? Excretion of water fluid from the body, right? In simple terms. This is antidiuretic, which means that it stops diuresis from happening. It has the opposite effect, so it causes reabsorption. From where? From DCT. What is DCT? Distal convoluted tubule. From the picture you would see. Therefore, it reduces urine output. So, I want to make you understand one thing. The regulation of ADH, it helps in water balance. That's the main function of ADH. So, regulation of ADH is done through plasma osmolality. So whenever the body has high osmolarity, sorry, not osmolality, osmolarity, the R. What is osmolarity? The number of solutes in a liter of solution, which means that if our body, basically if there is hemoconcentration, if the salts and the other things are more in number than the fluids, that means there is increased osmolarity. So when there is increased osmolarity, you need water to dilute it. That water will come from the reabsorption. Therefore, when there is less water in the body, in simple terms, ADH gets triggered, it increases, the concentration of ADH increases, and ADH then in turn, what is the function? It will help in reabsorption of water. So the water, less urine will flow, more water will come, and then will lead to maintenance of fluid balance in the body. In case there is hemodilution for whatever reason, that will stop ADH, and ADH will not reabsorb the water anymore from the DCT, so there is increased excretion of urine. This is what happens in diabetes insipidus. There is huge excretion of urine, huge volumes of urine excreted, about even 10 liters of urine excreted in this case. This is called diabetes insipidus. So when so much of urine is gone, there is only salt remaining in the body, and that causes hyponatremia, increased sodium in the body. This has many factors because of which diabetes insipidus can happen. Genetic cause, if there is accident, if there is any trauma to the hypothalamus, to the pituitary gland, it can lead to diabetes insipidus. Then we have SIADH, which is syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion. What happens here is that there is water intoxication because there is so much ADH, it will keep on reabsorbing water. There is so much water in the body. There is hemodilution, there is hyponatremia and hypervolemia happens because of this. Finally, this is the last thing. Just want to discuss this. Sheehan syndrome happens in people who just delivered a baby, let's say after the childbirth. The mother had undergone massive blood loss for whatever reason. So with that massive blood loss, there is sudden loss of blood from the body that causes infarction of the posterior pituitary gland, because of which this happens, Sheehan syndrome. So prolactin is not released, there is also oxytocin is not released, ADH is not released, leading to the symptoms like mother is trying to feed the baby, there is no milk. Milk doesn't come, there is mood swings, all of that because now pituitary is not working anymore because of infarction. Right. So finally, one case for you. Let's go through this quickly and I'll end the class. There is a person who is 40 years old and comes to you, to your chamber, says that my face is very abnormal, my skin is thick, my height is, you see that he is very tall, he has a large nose, has a large tongue. There is frontal bossing, which means that the forehead is very prominent, hands are enlarged, the heel pad is thickened. What is the most probable diagnosis? What is the most probable diagnosis we just read? Acromegaly? Is it understood? I have not touched thyroid gland today, okay, because thyroid in itself is very important and a very big topic, so it will be too long to take in one class. So we will be taking organ function test, another class for you. So under organ function test, we will have liver function test and thyroid function test, gastric function test, and under the thyroid function test, we'll be taking thyroid gland and its function. All right, so I'll end the class for today. Thank you for your patience.